those of you who do not know me, my name is Catherine Haskins, and I'm a co-founder of the Bridge Club. And I'm really excited that you are all here tonight. As you saw coming in, this is being recorded as well as being broadcast on Facebook Live because this information is critically important to the profession. I am so excited. We had a conversation on Tuesday night with Dr. Andy, and we'll explain who Dr. Andy is here in a minute, but we had a conversation with pet owners. And we're going to share with you some of the insights we learned from the pet owners. And we specifically talked about all the itching, all the scratching, all the rubbing, everything that could possibly drive a pet parent nuts. And then really help guide them through in their relationship with their veterinarian as well. So we're now going to bridge that conversation over to you all and really dive in deep about the role dermatology specifically plays in the human-animal bond. So I'm excited. So I had the pristine opportunity of being referred to Dr. Andy through the Bridge Club, not for medical purposes, but I had been hearing, people have been saying, we want to have a dermatology conversation. And so one of our Bridgers actually said, hey, have you ever heard this guy talk? He's amazing and he's really good at this. And so I, on a cold, email, reached out to Dr. Andy, and now he's one of my new friends. So I'm very excited. So he is from South Africa. You'll figure that out really darn quick once you start to hear him speak. What I think is really cool is that he actually did his residency in dermatology at the University of Florida, not holding it against him that he's a gator, and that he was on faculty at Ohio State. He is currently working with Zoetis Pet Care and is the director of dermatology and medical strategy there, or dermatology medical strategy there. So I'm really, really excited that he is here to talk to us. So before we jump into the full conversation, we have a rule, and for those of you who can turn on your camera, I hope you do, but we raise our glass and we're gonna start with a toast from Dr. Andy.
Well, Catherine, I thought about a lot of things, but in fact, it was a really easy one. When I recognized I was talking to veterinary professionals, and it was, the last 5.5 months have been incredibly challenging. I'm not in the trenches. I sit behind a desk here in my home office, but the job that you guys have done looking after America's pets, I'm in absolute awe. It must have been challenging. It must have been fearful at times, but what an amazing thing. So I'm going to drink to your health, your well-being, and your happiness. Cheers to you all.
Cheers. That's fantastic. So we were going to go ahead and quickly ask these questions. So the first question has been posted. If you haven't answered it, please answer it. Now I'm posting in the second about the idea, and let's talk about why we're asking these questions, Dr. Andy. When you have a client coming in with dermatology issues, how do you feel? Why did we ask that question tonight?
Yeah, because we live in a world right now where I see everybody there was ace. Everybody is a wannabe dermatologist, and that's awesome. I love it. And of course, derm is kind of fun now since, 2014 when Apical came along, and now there's Cytopoint. Take yourself back to pre-2014. Were the answers all A's then? Maybe not. Derm's a whole lot better these days, and that's awesome. But I hope that what you see is that things like Apical and Cytopoint, and I don't want to harp on them because I work for Zoetis, I own that, but they've really been game changers. But I hope you don't just see them as, this is just now another option to get Mr. Jones, who keeps complaining about his itchy schnauzer, off of my back and out of my consulting room. Okay, and I don't have to worry about them. Yeah, it does that. But in fact, what it does, it's given us the opportunity to provide a solution for allergic dogs that make an enormous difference. They work quickly, they're highly effective, their safety profile is really good. There's a lot of wow factor. Remember the first 100 times you dispensed Apical or gave a shot of Cytopoint, if you didn't have a few people who said, wow, that's really awesome, I'm not having to bother with the pred and the lack of efficacy of antihistamines, there was a lot of wow. What we've got to understand is we've got to use the wow to leverage to where we want to be, which is the diagnostic workup, okay? And I think that's really the key. Now, what I want to just remind everybody is that the reason for the wow is because we don't always recognize that people with itchy dogs are on an emotional roller coaster. And I know that's easy to miss because when they come in, what do we ask them? Good to see you, Mrs. Jones. What are you here for today? What's happening with Buster? Buster's licking his feet and rubbing his face on the ground, okay? We're veterinary professionals, we're veterinarians. What do we think? My mind immediately goes, it's feet, it's face. Man, this is going to be an atopic dog or a food allergic dog. Okay, and I'm already working the medical bit. What I'm failing to do is to really understand what that owner has just told me. Because the dog doesn't lick or rub its face in the ground in the clinic, right? There's too many other distractions. I don't see that behavior. And if I took the time just to ask them and say, so how do you feel about that? And I don't know that we do it, but I think it's a really important question. Then what we'll hear is, you know, I'm frustrated by it. I'm disappointed because I went and bought a $20 oatmeal shampoo at PetSmart, and it provides a little temporary relief, but I'm not sure it was good value for money. I don't like myself because I keep yelling at the dog to stop doing it. And that's not what my relationship with my dog's meant to be. Okay, so now I'm hearing the emotion. And if we took the time to ask, how do you feel about it? Or how do you think your dog feels with this problem? How do you think Buster feels? Then we get a different picture. And the other thing I also want to do is, Catherine, you did this the other night. You reminded me. We all have one of these, okay, a cell phone. Ask your CSRs, your receptionists, when someone's booking an appointment and they want to come in because they have a pet with itch, part of that pre-planning should be, can you take a video of what your dog or your cat is doing? And that changes it totally because, you know, the licking of the feet, licking of the feet just shouts allergy to me, okay? But licking of the feet, when I see on a video that goes on for more than about 10 seconds, have you had enough yet? I mean, you know, and it's like, okay, now I've got a different perspective about this, okay? And all of this, understanding what's truly happening at home and understanding the emotions that are associated with it changes my perspective as what I'm going to do, even the very first time that I see them. To me, itch is an urgent situation, okay? That person, that dog was put outside of the bedroom. Catherine, just remind me again, the other night we asked the question, how many people have or have considered putting their dog outside of their bedroom or off of their bed because of the itch? What was that
so what
number?
we specifically with the pet owners, I'm going to bring up two pet owner things for you all. First is the answer to the question that he's talking. We asked in a live poll, have you ever moved where your pet is sleeping out of the bedroom or out of the bed because your pet is itching and scratching? And so we offered them only 3 answers. We offered them yes, no, and I've thought about it. And so I'll let you reveal the data, and then I do want to go to our second question we have in the poll as well.
Yeah, it was just over 40% who said yes or I've thought about it. That's not what they imagined their life with their dog, okay? They got a pet, they have a relationship, there's a bond, the dog or cat sleeps in the bed with them or next to them in the bed. Now they're having to put the animal outside. Now they're excluding them from their environment. That's no fun. The human-animal bond is affected. And so, in my opinion, the human-animal bond is absolutely critical. We need to embrace that, understand it. We all have pets. We know how important our pets are to us. So I regard it as urgent. I want that dog back in that bedroom or in that bed tomorrow or tonight, okay? And I want to let them know that I think it's an important condition, and I want life to get back to normal, and I want them to have peace of mind. So, and if you think, you know, you might be thinking in your mind, hey, come on, you know, the first time I see this pet with itch, the very first time, and it's a history of, let's just say there's a history of 3 to 4 weeks ago, the dog started to scratch at its side. It happened a couple of times a week. Then a couple of weeks ago, it became every couple of days. And you know what? Last night, I had to put the dog outside because outside the bedroom. And you say to me, I don't think that person's on an emotional roller coaster. What I want to do is share with you some data that we have from market research. And we surveyed a huge number of people the first time they took their dog, it was dogs only, not cats, to the veterinarian. 88% of them, 9 out of 10, had already tried at least one over-the-counter medication. Okay, some of them up to 15. So they're not there in front of you today, 3 to 4 weeks after their first notice. It's because that over-the-counter spray, shampoo, antihistamine worked. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Okay, so clearly they're frustrated because this has continued. They thought it would go away after the first week. It didn't, so they're frustrated. They're annoyed that it's something that seems to be, that's made them have to bring their dog to the veterinarian. They're disappointed because they've tried something and it didn't work. They're a little angry because they spent $20 on it, and you know that seems to have been a waste of money. So I hope you understand I'm not estimating the emotional roller coaster. It's very real. It's there. We just need to take the time to ask about it and understand about it.
So I will say that with the second question we asked you in the poll in the chat had to do with what's the #1 complaint. We purposely left cost off. But even on the other night, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Shannon, the other night there were no comments about cost with regards to any dermatology care. So the idea that when we were having the conversation with the pet owners, that's not what they were concerned about. They were concerned about relief and speed of relief, as Shannon had put into the chat. The idea that they want that solution resolved, but they're also understanding it could be chronic. And I think that bridge to understanding what is happening with their pet and the pain of their pet, I think that kind of communication. So I did want to point out that I think I want to point out in particularly that we didn't include cost on purpose, but everyone has come back with the same answer, that it's annoying to live with. And it becomes about the pet parent, not necessarily about the pet sometimes.
So if I can comment on that, you know what I would say if that's what I realized, I would say I'd want to acknowledge it and empathize on it. I'd say I get it that it's annoying. I mean, I also wish that it just went away and it was there for a few days and didn't come back or hadn't progressed. So I totally understand it. But I would say to an owner, I want you to know that me and my entire team are here for you and for your pet. Okay, and my aim is to make your animal comfortable, and we're here to support you. And here's the good news, okay? Because let's get away from the annoying. I need some good news here. Here's the good news. In the last number of years, we've actually had products that have been specially produced and formulated for dogs with allergic dermatitis. That's what your dog has. We don't have to rely on antihistamines anymore, which are for humans with respiratory allergies, and steroids, which are for a bunch of things and no one wants to use them. We have medications that are highly effective in the vast majority of dogs and can be used safely, that are especially designed for this circumstance. And if you partner with me, I have a high degree of confidence that we can make your dog comfortable and you can get back to the normal life that you used to. You know, there's an upside. There's a value, something there for them. You know, that now they're listening and they hopefully have forgotten about I'm annoyed. That's how I would respond to that.
So I'd love to hear what other folks are doing in their practice or have heard practices do in order to be able to showcase this empathy. You guys can either speak right up without even worrying, or go ahead and put it in the chat, because I think that this is the cornerstone of it all. People become veterinarians because they love animals and they want to help them. But when we're talking about that human engagement, this is that side that I'm interested to see how practices are also incorporating.
I think I agree with you totally, Catherine. I honestly and totally agree with you. It's the cornerstone. Get in the connection, not just with derm, but this is my area and that's what we're talking tonight. But it's making the connection with the owner, letting them understand that you get it, what's happening, and that you're there for them. I mean, how do you do that? What tricks do you have? Because I think that's the key. Once they feel that you get it, now there's going to be a little bit of trust that comes in, and it's going to generate a little confidence. And what that does is gets them to listen a little more closely to the offer of a diagnostic workup or something. How do you do that?
So I'm curious if anyone wants to jump in and share. That's okay if you're a little quiet tonight. I get it. It's quite all right. I know it's a Thursday evening as we're going forward. But what other tips might you have in the practice? I think just simply asking, how are they doing? How has this impacted? But what other tips can we offer to them, Dr. Andy?
Well, I just, I already mentioned a couple of things. How do you feel about it? But, the other thing, just simple questions. And I know these are a little challenging sometimes. And it's not how we trained particularly, but we have to start to become comfortable. Sometimes it can be a little questionnaire that they fill out beforehand so that they can just, you can have a couple of emojis. I know a practice that gives the thing, it's just got a couple of emojis and circle what applies. Angry face, okay, boy, I understand. Sad face, okay. I don't have to, and I can say, tell me why you're sad, or tell me why you think your dog's sad, or whatever. And the other thing is, has this affected your activities and your lifestyle and what you do with your dog? As soon as you get into that a little bit, then there's an appreciation of, yes, this needs to be addressed and there's some urgency, and you can build off of that.
So I think it's really important, because one of the things that we talked a lot about on Tuesday night, not last night, is the fact that pet owners are informed about this. They are aware. They immediately came in with a lot of questions with regards to antihistamines, and then the conversation quickly evolved to really understand what else there was out there to really help solve this challenge with their pets. And so I think that sometimes we feel that we have to go too scientific or back up too much. And pet owners these days are very empowered. And so I think the notion of that expertise and that compassion are really critically important. I think one of the places we are most challenged, though, is when the pet owner doesn't know that it's chronic. So let's dive into chronic behavior.
Once you poop, then we will read. Okay, new rule. Once you poop, then we'll come in and read.
I think I found it. Someone is using, I get you, it happens. This is parented, this is live, this is what happens. So
Catherine, can I make one comment?
Oh, absolutely.
I just to kind of dovetail with what Andy said, I think it's really important to go into how this is affecting the bond. And we need to keep in mind that it's pretty unlikely that we're the first veterinarian that this person has brought their itchy dog to. And so they're frustrated, maybe they're guilty. If we can offer some hope, find out how it's affecting them, offer some hope to move forward, I think that's really critical.
Yeah.
It is. Really
agreed, Rick. And I'm going to build off of what Rick's just said. And so when you see that dog for the first time, whether you realize it's been going on for a while and you're the second, third, or fourth opinion, or that's your patient, and it's now a 13-month-old golden retriever, and you've seen it for all the regular stuff, but this is its first visit with itch. It's an incredibly critical time. You have a significant decision to make, because the likelihood is that the dog has a forever disease that may be seasonal, and could be intermittent, but there's a reasonable probability that it's going to be chronic. Okay, these are allergic dogs, and it doesn't go away. And the decisions you make, in my opinion, that very first time that patient is brought in with itch, are going to make an enormous difference as to whether you get to do a diagnostic workup, whether you get compliance from an owner with the medications, whether they come back for the recheck. And so the decision is, you have to think about what my recommendation is. Am I going to delight this owner and give them an incredible experience, or am I going to disappoint them? Okay? So that's the way I look at it. And if I delight them by giving them what I regard as best medicine that's going to resolve the problem as fast as possible and get life back to normal with as few side effects, then that's a person who, as I said, develops a little trust and confidence and is now willing to think about a diagnostic workup. But if we go with, here's some antihistamines and here's a 1% hydrocortisone spray or shampoo, I think most of us recognize that they're going to go through that, and in 3 weeks' time they'll be back and say, maybe a little help, but kind of disappointing. They're not there today wanting to wait another 2, 3, or 4 weeks for a solution. They're there today for a solution today. And if you don't give a solution today, you disappoint them. So now it's okay. I'm not sure that when I come back in 3 weeks' time, if I come back in 3 weeks' time, that I'm ready to listen to the next recommendation. And you want to do a diagnostic workup, and it sounds like a lot of work. It sounds difficult. Sounds like it's going to take a long time. No, I don't think I'm going to do that. Whereas if you delighted them 3 weeks before and you did 2 weeks worth of whatever, Apiquil, for example, and it came back and they were, okay, it was great, but it came back. Now we know we've got a chronic problem. But because you did the right thing for the first time, when you say, we know this is something that's not just going to go away, I need to do some diagnostics, they're more likely to listen. I think it's an incredibly important decision to get that person generating the trust and confidence in you that builds to everything else later, or I don't know. I'm not even sure I want to give these tablets anymore, or I'm not going to go back for that recheck, or I think I might just go to another veterinarian, Well, I'll ask the pet store clerk. It's a really important decision that you make.
Or the groomer, because I do want to bring that up. So often, let's bring up this topic of the groomer being that first line of defense when they seem to be potentially, if the dog needs a haircut, we haven't seen that the dog has been really biting under anything and the hair's been matted over it. And they're saying, hey, there's a spot here. Here's what I think you should be doing. And they've now given advice. How are we as professionals to engage in that and be a part of that? I know Bridge Club Pets, we will address it with the pet owners as well, but what can individual practices do when that pet owner comes in and says, well, my groomer told me?
Catherine, we have, you bring up a terrific point, and we have a campaign. It's a non-branded thing. It's got nothing to do with Apiquil and Cytopoint, at least not directly, but it's about what we call the science of stronger bonds, and it builds on repairing the bond that we believe is damaged when you have chronic itch. In any case, one of those things is it's a resource, it's a document, a one-page document that is that we use to give to groomers and handlers and all those additional people who might see a dog. And here's things that you might be asked or that you might see on a dog that should alert you that there is a medical problem. And here's what you should do, which is basically speak to the veterinarian. And we have that for the use within the practice, and I know practitioners who've even gone to local groomers and said, hey, I've got this nice little one-pager here. Have a look at this. If any of these things come up, please feel free to give me a call or call our CSR team, because it's almost certain that dog has a medical problem, and we'd love to know about it, and we'd love the recommendation. So and it has nothing to do with the drugs or anything. It's just recognizing the kind of early lesions that might be indicative of something that's a problem, right?
So in that case, though, when the pet owner does come in specifically to their practitioner, do you have advice of what they can say when they don't agree with what potentially the advice is that the groomer has provided? Oh, just, give them another bath, or here, put them on this Benadryl or XYZ.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my advice is that, and I'll go back to what we've kind of started with. I'll say, I think you're here for a reason. What you might have heard and what someone's told you and what someone's given you hasn't really worked. And I believe you're here today because you haven't got the solution you were looking for, okay? And that's what I want to do. And in fact, I feel so strongly about it, I'm going to give a tablet right now, because I don't want you to wait whilst you go to your son's soccer practice or pick up your daughter from basketball and then to the shops. I want this to start working, and I want by tonight for your dog to start some relief. Okay, that gives them a sense of, this is awesome. I mean, yeah, I've been frustrated. I've heard those things, and no one's kind of put it that way, that we can get this under control and it can start within a few hours. So I would recognize that there's a reason why they're there, that they took the trouble to call, to make an appointment, to come to the practice with their dog or their cat, and that meant something. So it's not time. You're not looking for something that may work in a few days and may not, or something that I've got to give you a long story about. I'm going to give you some steroids. Now, here's what may happen, and that, because if you dispense steroids, and if you do the right thing, which I think all of you probably do, is you give them a little heads up of the side effects that can occur, because somewhere in the region of 50% of dogs have one or more of those side effects, and if we don't warn them, then that's a bit of a slap in the face when it happens. But once, as you do that, and even if they, and you've told them polydipsia, increased urinations, increased drinking, increased appetite, and all those sorts of things, because we don't talk polydipsia, polyuria with pet owners, but when you tell them, even if those things don't happen, they've gone home thinking, I wonder if it's going to happen. Now I'm worried that those things might happen. What does that mean for my dog? You've not taken them off the emotional roller coaster. They're still there. They're still worrying. Yeah, of course, steroids reduce the itch. No question about that. I'm not going to argue that point. But my objective is not just to stop itch. My objective is to get life back to normal and get people off the emotional roller coaster. And I don't believe that steroids do that, because you've got a good chance of side effects, and even if they don't happen, they're worried about it because of the steroid spiel you had to give them.
So what I think is really important here, and Mary put this out, so really an important statement that Mary put in the chat. So if you don't have your chat, please look at it for everybody. But the idea is that this is fantastic counsel to show empathy, to do all of those things. But in this day and age of COVID, where our connection with pet owners is definitely, I know for Dr. Cheryl, I know she isn't able to talk in, but she does not see the pet owners in her practice anymore. It is all drop-offs. Take care of the pet, then they're having the phone call. So how can we build that relationship with pet owners and also potentially foster that relationship with those groomers, et cetera, in this day and age? Because this is the hard part. And this isn't changing over definitely not over the next 90 days, but just curious as to what you think there, or I'd love to hear other people's opinions as well.
Well, I'm going to say, Catherine, that, I'll own my bias. I have to own that, and I work for Zoetis. But I'm going to tell you, here's my point of view here, is that I think it's even more critical now that we offer best medicine right up front. Okay, let's get it right from the beginning, because this way that we have to practice now is more challenging. I don't have an opportunity. I have less opportunities to screw it up, and we're going to try this. Why don't you come back in a week's time? Okay, that's a challenge. That's hard for us to do. That adds to the risk. I think there's even more reason, and not just in derm, with everything now. We all want to practice best medicine. I know that's within our hearts and the principle that we want. Sometimes we can stray a little bit. I think this situation is further reason for us to really advocate for what we believe is going to provide a solution and that can be carried out at home and not create extra problems. So that's just the perspective I would have.
And I will say that, and I'd love to hear other people's point of view on this, but I think telemedicine helps us a lot here, or virtual care, and having that post checkup, or being able to have what they call, and for me, it's such a big word for what we're doing, but the asynchronous, where the communication is not instantaneous, but when the practitioner has a moment to go back to the pet owner, I think that's absolutely huge. I'd love to hear anyone else's point of view on how this can be done better during these crazy times.
Do you mind if I speak up?
Oh, absolutely, Shannon.
So I just want to add, I think, which most of you are probably already doing in your practices, but just with everything going on now, I think we really need to embrace technology. And so whatever that means for your practice, whether it's adding forms to your website and say, we've got this itchy pet form, can you print it out and fill it in and then, bring it for your visit? And plus, I feel like if you do that, then that's a good, objective way to measure the pet's progress. If they're filling out that same form every time, you can see, are they improving based on, concrete evidence instead of just how they feel about their pet today. So, having things like that, forms that they can fill out either online or print and bring in. And then, of course, having them email videos in and that kind of thing, too. I mean, I know our CSRs are very overwhelmed, too, but you can always dump them to a separate email and have someone else go through them, or, whatever kind of works in your situations. But I feel like that really empowers pet owners to say, you know, I can't go face to face with my doctor, but I can at least give them as much information to work with as possible.
And I think that's huge. I love the idea of having the forms to really be monitoring those, but I love the tools that you also have at Zoetis that is talking about that what things that breeders could be, not breeders, groomers could be looking at.
Yeah.
And I feel like it'd be great to give that to the pet owner, because the pet owner is the one who is taking the pet to the groomer. And if they said, hey, listen, I'm sharing this with you in case you see anything on my dog that I didn't see, alert me so that I know that there's something wrong and I need to get her to the vet. So I feel like that would be an incredible opportunity to empower that pet owner who uses a groomer to get them on board with looking at their pet in a different way, potentially. I don't know how others feel about that.
Yeah, I feel like
Catherine, if you don't mind, sorry, carry on, Sharon.
I was gonna say that may even help sort of discourage people from necessarily taking like frontline advice from groomers and other people who are sort of paraprofessional, but may not have kind of the knowledge to, you know, to be giving the suggestions they are, but to say, you know, participate in what's going on with my pet by helping me discover things, and that way I can take this back to my vet.
Yeah.
I put in the chat box there's a website, and yes, it's been generated by Zoetis, but it's unbranded. Okay, if you go to sciencesstrongerbonds.com/resources, you can download all of these things like itch trackers and that what I talked about that for the groomers, the questionnaires that you can use, like Shannon's talking about, that they can fill out beforehand. And there's no Apical or Cytopoint or anything on there. Okay, you can do whatever you want with it. If you hate Zoetis, it's still okay, because you know, it's not going to remind you of us, but there's a whole bunch of resources that you can look at there. Pick what you want. Is there something that appeals to you that might work for you in your practice? There's stuff about how receptionists might have a conversation with an owner who calls in, you know, how critical it is to get that patient in and not do phone fixes. How do you do that? It's not always easy when someone's saying, just tell me something I can buy over the counter. When you know that's the wrong advice. It's the totally wrong thing to do. How do you have that conversation in the example? So if you might want to spend a little time and have a look and see if there's something there that is maybe useful for you or your practice.
And I'll make sure that when we send out this full piece that I'll have that full link in there for everyone so that they can have that as well. I will say in that conversation with the pet owners is that, you know, they're seeking that advice. They are looking for that first line of defense. They want to be able to see what they can solve at home. But what I do appreciate is that Dr. Andy gave them tips of saying, start really looking at the skin. And if the skin is looking like this, or if you're noticing it, then that means there's a problem. And so that was probably the first piece of advice, is if you as a pet owner are noticing it, that means that it's probably a problem. And then giving them, if you can't get into the vet the next morning, or you can't get in within the next 2 days, here are just a couple things to do, get that appointment, but in the meantime. So I think empowered pet owners want to actually be a part of the solution. And so they're looking for those things. But the worst thing that they're doing, because there were a lot of questions on it about, can I give Benadryl? Can I give an antihistamine? Can I do those things? Can I solve this on my own? And that's what we need to make sure that we're empowering the pet owners, say, this is worth you having us look at, because of this could be chronic, or this could be something leading to a bigger issue. And I think having that dialogue in a very authentic way is really going to be important.
So, Catherine, my advice to your point, my advice to the pet owners, because, they may only get an appointment in 3 or 4 days' time that's convenient for them, or you're busy or whatever. You know, what can I do in that time? And I see Kim Horn there, and Kim knows that, you know, I have a soapbox, and I've even got a virtual soapbox that I'll get on about antihistamines, because it's for me, and it's a travesty that antihistamines are dispensed. And if you give them the excuse to go and get antihistamines, they will always use them as a crutch. They'll continue to do it. So you should never do that. But if you have to advise anybody for something, you know, it's Tuesday and they only get an appointment on Friday, what they can do is just bathe the dog, okay? Is very lukewarm, tepid water. Bathe the dog with the shampoo. You don't have to go out and buy an expensive shampoo. bathe the dog on a daily basis if it's a short-coated dog, small dog, but bathe it once, wash it off all those allergens, wash off the chemicals, the irritants, help reduce the amount of bacteria and yeast on there. Use baby wipes if they're licking at the feet on a daily basis. That provides some temporary relief. They feel like they're doing something. You've given them some advice, but it's not going to provide some kind of long-term solution. They'll still be coming in on Friday. So that was my advice. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, and I think you brought it up, or if I remember correctly, Catherine, was, which we shouldn't fail to recognize as veterinarians, is that there's well over 6 million dogs with allergic dermatitis that don't come into the veterinarian. And it's an enormous number of dogs that deserve better than what they get in, which is over-the-counters. And one of the key reasons why they don't come in, I know your mind might go to they don't want to spend the money. And of course, there's some people for whom that's the reason. One of the key reasons is, though, people feel guilty. They think it's their fault. They don't want to come in and be told, well, it's because of this, that, or the other in your home. You're not looking after your dog. You don't have a clean home. There's house dust mites. They feel guilty about it. And we need to reassure them that it's not their fault at all, okay? This happens. The 15% of humans who have hay fever and asthma shouldn't feel guilty. It's not their fault. It's genetics. It's a very complex thing. So keep that in mind, okay, that you don't want to do anything that makes them feel guilty. You need to encourage them and say, we can help. It's not your fault. It's not your dog's fault.
I think when you said that to the pet owner, that actually really resonated when they started saying that just because you have allergies doesn't make you less of a human being because you have allergies. And just because your sister has allergies doesn't make you the worst brother, right? So, I mean, the notion being is how can we as pet parents, and they do take it very seriously. And then the worst part is then they take it out on the veterinarian. And I think that's what we're trying to make sure, that there's that partnership. And so we talked a lot about building that partnership between the veterinarian and the pet owner when there is a dermatology issue, because things can constantly be changing. I've got that light coming in on me. I'm being lit very interestingly. But I found this to be such an incredible opportunity to be able to talk to the pet owner and then be able to talk to you all and hear very profoundly the impact of empathy and the impact of what this is doing to their lives as a result of not being able to feel that itch for their pet. We all know what a mosquito bite feels like, and we keep itching it. We know what dry skin feels like. So, I mean, imagine this, when we don't know what the medical issue is with it. So I do want to see if there's any additional questions or comments that we want to bring forward for Dr. Andy. I feel like this is an incredibly important topic that we need to bring back more and more, but any points people want to make? Kurt, do you want to unmute yourself? You had quite a few things.
Yes, I will. Sitting back and listening, I'm hearing themes that I hear routinely around almost any topic or that we pick up and try and push forward to you through Animal Health Digest. And that is kind of where Rick Hartigan started. That is, you're probably, as it relates to skincare issues, derm issues, you're probably not the first person to see the pet. I think anytime we read history, talk about history, it's so critical to have a dialogue about history. And that takes us back to Catherine talking about using the front desk or virtual care interactions, to Shannon's capture of any digital experience that's there. But I think the thing that strikes me the most about this conversation is that we can't apply a solution to someone else's problem unless we have buy-in. And the only way to get that is through triangulating and making the owner a part of the solution for the pet. So that starts with the dialogue, it starts with the gathering of the history, and it says, okay, for me to do my job as a veterinary medical professional, I need your help. I need to understand ABC. And then let's look at this. Let's look at 2 or 3 possible solutions. I believe the big gun is where we need to start. This is what that would cost. Now let's talk about what you think you can manage because you're going to be with the pet 24/7.
Mhm.
And I think it's that dialogue basis that limits the veterinarian or our industry's ability to gain the recognition and the respect of the pet owner. And I'll stop there, Catherine, because this is a real portion of my own positioning all the time. And certainly we do that through what we share. I've shared a bunch of stuff with Catherine, recent posts that actually can give you a picture of what the groomer publications are talking about with the groomers. And if she's willing to share those in follow-up, they're certainly there. It's a little surprising to me.
Can you give the highlight though on the groomers? I will absolutely share those when I send out the video, but can you give a quick highlight since you've actually, you sent them to me and I haven't read them.
Well, and essentially groomers may be quite scared to see a senior dog. I believe a groomer will see a pet 4 times for every time a veterinarian does, even in a compliant with veterinary annual visits or semi-annual visits. Groomers are afraid, if you read between the lines, groomers are afraid of dermatology issues or skincare issues, but they are very willing to recommend a shampoo. That's the summary. And I think one of the things that we're able to do is we're able to present that information to you so you can read it in 10 minutes and gather from it without having to go research it yourself. And I'd be happy to get communication back from you anytime after Catherine pushes that to you. But
yeah, I'll include that so everyone has the link. It's actually an incredible read. If you don't subscribe to Animal Health Digest, it's free to be able to get to. It's fantastic. And Kurt has always been a big fan of the Bridge Club, but I love that he brings in these little nuggets of the insight of what the actual groomers are thinking. What did you want to add, Andy?
No, I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I love that. And we're actually going through op planning for next year right now. And I was in a 4-hour workshop today talking about all of these things. That's the sort of little nugget. And in fact, what I said is the use of shampoos and over-the-counters and antihistamines, there is, by the time we as veterinarians see the patients, they're already biased because they've read so much on the web and online, enough for them. So, it's a big bias we have to overcome. Okay, it's not like this is the first time they've seen anything. No, they've read lots of people saying, yeah, this helps my dog, and CBD oil, and all of these things. There is now already an inherent bias, and I said, if we really want to tackle this, it's not only about what we do at that first visit, which is what my mind goes to the first time I see it. We've got to actually do direct-to-consumer outreach that we get to them very early in the piece through social media and everything, and show what is possible and what isn't possible. And through groomers, for example, that's an incredible insight, and I really appreciate hearing that.
Well, we are getting really close to our end, so I want to be sure we're always careful about making sure we don't keep people too long. So what I want to be able to do is we're going to do a parting thought from Dr. Andy, unless anyone has any final comments that they'd like. I see Mark turned on his camera, so maybe Mark has something he wants to say, so I want to be sure he has a chance.
Well, it was by accident. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but
we can.
I do want to say our practice philosophy is celebrating the bond, and it's a team approach. And the consistency of message is really clear. If the client gets it from the initial phone call, through the technician, through the veterinarian. And I try every treatment plan that I present, I ask an open-ended question to that owner. Are you okay with this treatment plan? Is this something that you will buy into? And if you walk that journey with them and you get buy-in, you cement that bond and you build that credibility with them. And I do want to give a shout out to Kim Horn, who has written an excellent book for technicians to really engage them in the dermatology process. So all you practice people out there, get that book and it'll transform and engage your technicians in the dermatology process.
Hey, Kim, can you put that in the chat? I will then share that out with folks when we send out the video as well, because that's part of what the Bridge Club does. It isn't self-serving on one end. If we can help others with other content, including Animal Health Digest, Kim's book, I'm all for it. So if you'll put that in there, I will make sure I include as well. But thank you so much, Mark. We're happy you turned on your camera. It makes the world a better place.
Sorry about that, everyone. I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. So Dr. Andy, any parting thoughts, and then we will do our closing toast.
Yeah, I want to just tie in something that Kirk said and that Mark said, just tie them together. It's a partnership, right? And both of you made that point. And Mark, to your open-ended question. So, you know, this is a forever disease. So you have a discussion. This is what we can do. How do you feel about that? And if they can't do it, if you give them an open-ended, give them the opportunity to say, I believe what you're telling me is good medicine, but there's just no way I can do that. Okay, let's find something that you can actually do. I think it's so important. So it's about connection. I mean, we started with communication. Someone said, you know, I think Catherine, you said it's kind of the, you know, the cornerstone of it all, and there's no question that it comes back to that again. We talk in all of these things, and it's practicing and learning how to say those things. But so my toast is actually going to be, as we close here.
Raise your glass.
I'm going to toast to more itch-free days for dogs and cats.
I love that. Cheers, everybody.